So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our last class on last webinar on anxiety and alarm and anxiety. I want to thank you, all of you, for assisting to our webinars. It was a great pleasure to have Eva and Sarah and my two other colleagues who's been working on the support technicality and putting everything on Zoom. So from the bottom of my heart, I really want to thank Eva for saying a big yes and being there and being really into it and giving all her time and teaching me and Sarah at the same time. So thank you, Eva. So for those who didn't assist to the last webinar, you can always find the previous one on our Zoom, no, on your YouTube list. Maybe Nicolas or Martin can put the link so you can record it. So it's like a gift that we had from Eva. She allowed us to record it so people can watch it and review it and then get into it. so so because it's a lot of content today, I will ask Sarah to introduce herself.
Oui, Sarah Claire Deschnegashin. I'm from Mashtoyat, Lac Saint Jean. I'm a Pegogamil Nuts. I'm here to do the bridge over the past workshop with the First Nation ways of teaching. I'm also working in language and culture at FNEC. I'm a hunter gatherer. I'm an artist, a mom. I'm a two-spirit. And also, I want really to honor and thank Eva for the gift that she's doing to everybody in offering her knowledge and offering her wisdom with us. If next time I see you, Eva, I'll put bear fat on your hair to honor you like they did to me when I was in Rapid Lake, but just to honor you as a gesture of that we are really, really lucky and blessed and honored to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah and Valerie and Martin and Nicolas. That none of this could happen without all of the work that you put into the background as well. So just for those of you that don't know me, my name is Eva D'Agostini. I'm a school psychologist. I've worked in the field for many, many, many years. I've worked all across Canada. And I had the honor of working in northern Saskatchewan in the very early part of my career, and also in the Yukon with the Indigenous communities, First Nations communities. And so I know some of the challenges that you face, but also much of the beauty that you have in your communities as well. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you today is another talk, another aspect of who we are as human beings, what happens to us, how it functions. And the material that I'm sharing with you is the material of Dr. Gordon Neufeld, a Canadian developmental psychologist who's developed a very comprehensive theory to help us to understand how we function as human beings. And of course, having been in the field for many years and having children of my own, I was looking for something that was comprehensive, not simplistic. The most interesting thing, of course, that has happened in the last 15 or 20 years is now we can look at the neuroscience as well. So Dr. Neufeld brings the theory, but now the research is confirming much of what he has pulled together. And so what I'm going to share with you today is just a better understanding of what is happening to us in this time of COVID-19. Where we are basically experiencing a very strong emotion, and that's the emotion of alarm, and that's leading to behaviors that we call anxiety. It can lead to other behaviors as well. If you want a little more information, the other 3 sessions that we have done talk about some other manifestations of what happens in this time of uncertainty. But today we're going to focus particularly on alarm and anxiety, and what that means, and then what we can do to help our children. So let me just share my screen and get my PowerPoint started. And there we go. So alarm, anxiety, and how we help our children. So first we're going to look at where alarm comes from and how it plays out. And then we're going to look particularly at what our role is as adults and how we can intervene to help our children. And of course, today we got another dose of alarm because Premier Legault has announced that the schools were open. Now, every one of you are in different communities, and so you don't know at this moment how it's all going to play out. We have 2 weeks to get ourselves ready to welcome our children into schools outside of the Montreal area, and 3 weeks inside the Montreal area, not a long amount of time to do a big, big, big job. And so, of course, we are going to be feeling something. We are going to be feeling something that we generally call anxiety, which is a sense, and is not very vague, a huge sense of unsafety, unease, lots of apprehension, and we're going to also find that we're going to have lots of restlessness. Our whole system is going to be activated. And what it exactly is, it is an activated alarm system. So first thing we need to do is we need to go into the brain so that we have a little bit of an understanding of what is going on inside of us, and then how that manifests both in terms of our behavior and in terms of our thinking. So if we go inside the brain, the limbic system is the part that's deep inside of our brain. It's a, I hate using the word primitive because it makes it sound like it's not very important or not very clever. It's a very smart part of our brain because its job is to keep us alive, is to make sure that we don't get confused and don't do anything that isn't going to actually assure our survival. Three big parts of that limbic system. The one is the amygdala, and it's a little tiny organ, looks like about the tip of a thumb, like an almond, and it is basically our smoke detector. It senses whenever there's danger out there. It can be verbal, it can be nonverbal, it can be visual. There's all different ways. Sometimes it's just a sense of smell. Anything that just allows the amygdala picks up on anything that possibly could be a danger to us. It seems to have this ability to evaluate what's going on outside and sets a response into motion. It connects very closely, and you see they're right smack beside each other, to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus basically gives the message to the rest of the body. All right, the amygdala tells us it's danger, it's time to do something, let's get ready. Even if we don't do it yet, let's get ready. And linked right close to that is the hippocampus, which is involved with memory. And the first job of the hippocampus is to remember what's dangerous to us. And then the other job of the hippocampus is to actually help us to remember all of the other things we need to remember in our life. And one of the things I'm sure many of you have found in this last little while, because ever since basically we've declared the COVID-19 as a pandemic and the number of deaths and illnesses have gone up, many of you might have found that your memory isn't as good. You go into a room, you can't remember what you went there for. You can't seem to remember, all names of people, all sorts of things. Well, it's because your hippocampus right now is quite preoccupied with trying to remember and figure out how to keep us safe. And so the whole limbic system, the whole alarm system is working at helping us to try and keep us safe. Now, I just want to add one more little piece here, because our amygdala can also be affected by early childhood adverse experiences, or what we often call trauma. So some of you might be even having a more difficult time right now, and especially with any kind of changes, with like announcements that happened today, because we know that those kinds of experience, so early childhood traumatic experience, can actually give you a very sensitive amygdala. So for some of you, the reactions that I'm going to describe happen a lot. And I'm going to also describe what happens when our alarm system gets overwhelmed. So you might recognize yourself in that. And of course, when we look at our alarm system, we're also thinking about our children. So the alarm system is this limbic system with the amygdala registers the threat, and the hypothalamus kind of gets things going. And the hypothalamus communicates with the sympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is our system of action, and it makes us, gets us ready to be able to do whatever we have to do to survive. And what happens is when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, we have an increase of cortisol, an increase of adrenaline, norepinephrine, growth hormone. The norepinephrine makes us extremely vigilant. I know for myself, if I go to the grocery store, I'm always thinking and listening for somebody that's coughing, because that's one of the things that my brain basically says you have to pay attention to: who's coughing, who's wearing a mask, who's not wearing a mask, who's, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these biochemicals help us to focus on what's important. We also have our blood vessels constrict. We have an increase in breathing and heart rate. The blood vessels constricting can also cause blood pressure rising. And these are all normal, important, good things for us so that we can do what we have to do to keep ourselves safe. The blood diverts to the muscles, and if we get really, really it's very necessary for us to act in our survival, we stop digesting, and we can often get stomach aches. So what's important here is that the arousal and the attention systems are highly involved, and alarm is given the priority. Many of you probably are feeling incredibly tired. That's because there's this little bell that's ringing in the back of your head. Be careful, be careful, be careful. I know that you're listening for all sorts of sounds. Normally my husband leaves the apartment to take the garbage down to the place where you get rid of garbage. He comes back in. I don't even pay attention to that. In fact, I'm thrilled he took the garbage out. Now he takes the garbage out, and I wait for him to come back in, and then I listen to see whether he's turned on the water and whether he's washing his hands properly. So it's one of the things we need to understand is that when our alarm system is activated, and especially when we are under threat, it's really hard for us to pay attention to everything that we need to pay attention to. And this is going to be, when your children come back into school, this is going to be very hard for them to pay attention to the usual kinds of things that they're pretty good at paying attention to. Of course, with some of our children, they've already had difficulty with paying attention, and some of them it is simply because their alarm system is being overworked. So first thing Dr. Neufeld likes to do is always likes to let us know how is it all supposed to work? And so we've got alarm, and what's supposed to happen when we experience alarm? Well, he's going to use a traffic circle. For those of you that saw the presentation on frustration, it's a similar traffic circle, but not exactly the same. The emotion that's going into it right now is alarm. And what is alarm meant to do? Well, it is meant to make us cautious, conscientious, careful, concerned, and cautious. So we're going to be careful. We're going to make sure that we don't get into trouble. We're going to wash our hands more, and so on. And that's it's an excellent response. It's what we do to be careful. It basically stops us. A lot of children will actually stop. Some of them will actually even hide, because that makes them, it makes it just a bit safer. I don't want to get into any trouble. I'm going to check out the lay of the land. What's happening? What am I supposed to do? And of course, we do certain things to get our children's attention so that they can stay safe. We raise our voice. We give them sometimes threats, and especially separation, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Sometimes we give them an ultimatum because we want them to pay attention and to be careful and cautious. Sometimes we feign separation. We tell them, I'm leaving now, and because we want them to follow us. We trade on their fears. Sometimes we tell them scary stories. We just anything that we can do to keep our children safe. And with children who have a well-functioning alarm system, it is going to slow them down, stop them, so that we can then explain to them why we want them to stop. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter how careful we are. We can't fix things. We can't make something better by being super, super careful. So some alarming futilities are not being able to hold on or keep close, or the loss of affection or significance to another. So it doesn't matter if the fellow that I love or the woman that I love doesn't love me anymore. I can try to be as good as I can, and some of you have probably done that. I know that I've been talking to my daughter, and she says, "Mom, I just turned myself into a pretzel." Yes. So sometimes we do everything we can to be as good as we can to keep that love going. But sometimes we just can't. We aren't going to be the one who's wanted or preferred, and there's nothing more that we can do. Sometimes people just won't understand us or know where we're coming from. Sometimes we just can't be good enough. We can't make time stop. And we certainly cannot stop loss or death of those that we're attached to. So these are futilities, which means that this doesn't matter what you do, you can't make it better. And so, as with our traffic circle of frustration, when you can't fix something, then you need to go into adaptation. And adaptation, of course, comes with tears. So it's an emotional process whereby we are changed by that which we cannot change. It actually can transform us, but the journey of adaptation is a journey of sadness and tears. And this is what we've actually had to go through because there's so many things that have changed, so many scary things that we're dealing with, so many things that we don't know what to do. It's kind of like looking into an abyss. And really, the only way in which we can deal with the unknown that is truly scary is actually pay attention to it. You know, we're going to, for example, in terms of going back to the school, we don't know what it's going to be like. We don't know if we're going to have the ability to manage what needs to be managed. We've got to really look at that. We've got to let ourselves feel the alarm that we have, and then to cry about the fact that we're not going to get it perfect. And so that crying is allows us then to bounce back and to figure our way through. And of course, we call this the grieving process. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one to do. And right now, actually, for some of us, we can't even go there. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But for some of us, we do. We need to have a good cry. And I'll talk later on about how we can help ourselves have a good cry, because we are very resourceful as human beings. In order to cry, of course, we need a soft heart and a safe place to cry. We need to be able to tolerate feelings of vulnerability. We need to be with someone or in a situation where we can feel safe, right? And for some of us, that might be possible. For some of us, it might not. Sometimes we have to find a private place to do this. With our children, of course, we hope to be the safe place for them to have their tears. We find that when we can have a cry about the things that are scaring us, the alarm can be turned off, and sometimes it can be proven false. And so we're now able to handle things that are more alarming. It leads to resilience, to resourcefulness. We can be relieved, and we're able to rest. And it's really important for us to find a bit of rest, because our brain actually can't find solutions unless it's at rest. Because when it's still trying to find the solution, only one solution is possible. We need to basically switch over to another part of our brain that allows us to look at many different solutions. So feeling sad, having our tears is one way that we can cope with a world that we cannot manage. Now, there's one other little piece that we need to consider, and this is sometimes there are things that we need to face. So caution, not going somewhere, not doing something. I mean, I think right now the whole issue of, do we send our children back to school? Do we not send them back to school? Do we go back to school? We can stay cautious, and some of you can choose to stay cautious from now until the end of the year. But at some point, whether it's September or October, or at some point, we are going to have to, because we want an education for our children, we are going to have to figure out how we can deal with our alarm. And crying about it is not going to necessarily solve the whole problem. What we actually need here is something that we call courage. Courage, the ability to face the things that are scary for us. And every one of you have had to do that. When you first became a teacher, you had to have the courage to speak in front of a group. If you're a singer or a performer, you have this wonderful talent. But in order to share that talent, you have to stand up in front of other people. Well, courage comes from mixed feelings. It comes from the ability to have two major feelings, which is, one of them is alarm, which is total fear, especially if you're a performer. Oh my goodness, what happens if I get up there and they don't like me? But the other one is the desire. And so we have these two things, or the desire can be to get an education. The alarm is, well, what if people get sick? So we have to mix those things. And when we are able to find a balance between desire and alarm, then we take courage into our hands and we can face the things. And we might find that it's not as difficult as we thought. So we want to take part in some fun, but we're afraid to be laughed at. We want to ask someone a question, but we're afraid to appear stupid. Some of you are going to ask your questions because it's important to you to ask a question. It doesn't matter if people don't like you. Some stand up for a friend or to lose popularity, to share our story, but to realize not everyone's going to be interested, to express our opinion and to meet disapproval and so on, to be ourselves and to be alone. So this is what courage is all about. And because alarm can stop us if we get stuck in caution, but we need to mix alarm and desire so that we can do more than we ever thought that we could. And so this then can lead us to be brave but not foolish, to persevere, to be goal directed, and but also to be tempered. So we're going to do things, we're not going to do dangerous things, but we're going to figure out how we can manage a difficult situation. And this is what courage is all about. So basically, when we are feeling alarmed, it should move us to caution if that's possible, to cry if that is futile, and to take courage if what alarms us is in our way. And this is what we mean by a well-functioning alarm system. Now, what is it that alarms us the most? Well, facing separation, the experiencing or facing the lack or the loss of closeness to those to whom we are attached. And oh my goodness, is not this time right now a time of huge separation alarm, attachment alarm? There's so many things that are affecting us, so many things that we're worried about. Our alarm systems are nearly overwhelmed and overloaded by too many things. Now, just a little sidebar here about attachment and how we attach. And again, maybe at a later date, I can elaborate on this, maybe have another session where we can elaborate on this and how we can use the way in which we attach to enhance attachment in the classroom or in our homes. But I'm just going to cover this briefly so that we get some sense of how complex attachment is. So we need to attach deeply so that we can grow. Dr. Neufeld envisions this as roots. The roots need to go down. And as the roots go down, the attachment deepens and our ability to become mature enhances. We attach through the senses and we attach through sameness. These are very basic levels of attachment, but they're incredibly important levels of attachment. If we want children to lean on us and to trust us, we need to make sure that when they look at us, that they feel comfortable with us. And one of the best ways, of course, for children to feel comfortable with us is to smile. And for those of you that are going back into the schools, oh my goodness, your cheeks are going to be sore because all of you intuitively know that what you need to do is to show children on your face, to show them by your body, by the way that you stand, that you are going to be there for them, that you are going to take care of them, right? Of course, children need to know that they belong to us, and they need to believe that we're going to take care of them, and that increases attachment. The only problem is that the more we give our heart away, the more vulnerable we get. And so we have to be very careful. You have, of course, many of you as teachers have proven to your children how important they are to you by reaching out to them by Zoom or telephone or whatever way you did. You let them know that you cared about them. And of course, the most profound way of being attached is when we believe that there is somebody in our life who can love us even with our imperfections, love us just the way we are, even if we make mistakes. And again, this is a very, very important message that all of our children need from us. What happens, of course, is that the attachment alarm can happen on any one of these levels. So we have the threat of not being with. And again, this is very much what happened in COVID-19. Oh my goodness, we can't be with the people that we love. But then we found other ways of connecting with them. Sometimes we feel badly because we don't feel the same as anybody else, and that can affect our sense of attachment. Sometimes we don't believe that people really want to take care of us, that we don't belong, and that's going to increase our attachment alarm, or that we don't matter, or that we're not loved, or that if they knew us, that people won't be able to love us. So attachment is kind of adds another layer of alarm to us, and some of this is very much what we're living right now. So some experiences of separation, the arrival of a sibling, whenever a new baby is born into the family, it crosses the mind of the other children. Is there going to be enough love for us? Of course, with parents being away, shuffling between parents, experiences of adoption and divorce. These are all ways in which children's sense of attachment is affected and increases their alarm. And some of our children live more of these things than other children do. We have to be very sensitive to children who are in foster care, to children who've been separated from their parents, to children whose parents have to work long hours and be away from them. They actually experience separation alarm, which increases their overall alarm. Obviously, when we're not chosen by those that we want to be chosen with, etc., increases that. And of course, COVID-19 has increased our realization that bad things can happen to those to whom we are attached, including death. So there's lots of alarm in our system right now for these reasons. Now, what is anxiety per se? Because I've talked about alarm, but how does that relate it to anxiety? Well, alarm is the primary emotion. And so if a child says to us, I'm scared, I'm worried, is very clear about the separation that's bothering them, that alarm is bothering them, that actually is alarm. And it's not a mental health problem. It's not an anxiety problem. It is a reality. It's reality. It's a worry, but it's not a bad thing in and of itself. But sometimes we can't actually face what it is we're alarmed about. And Dr. Neufeld calls this alarm without eyes. And why does that happen? Well, because our brain protects us from seeing that which would make us feel too vulnerable or too wounded. And it's necessary. For those of you that might have to go back to school in the next couple of weeks, or even in the next month, you are going to actually have to, your brain is going to shut off some of the alarm that you feel. Some of you are going to either feel numb, or some of you are just not going to feel alarm because you need that to be able to function. But it can cause other problems, because what's happening underneath the iceberg is the alarm is still there, the adrenaline is there, the cortisol is there, the blood pressure is there, so the emotion is swirling around. Now, if the emotion translates into a feeling, which means that I take what I'm experiencing and I can bring it to my consciousness and I can name it and I can talk about being scared, then that's emotions moving through. Okay, it needs to move through. But when our brain decides to protect us because it's way too much to bear, and as I say, some of you already feel this kind of numbness, you kind of feel pretty cool, you feel pretty okay, but you have to remember that all this stuff is swirling underneath. So the feelings go away. And when there's too much emotion and too little feeling, so when there's more emotion than less feeling, now it comes out in behaviors. Now we start getting obsessions. We start worrying about not just about what's going to happen when people get sick, but we're going to start worrying about maybe there's spiders coming or scary animals. We start having compulsions. We start having to do things in a certain way, put things in order. We might actually have a compulsion to twirl our hair or pull our hair out. Maybe to eat. Some of us have the compulsion to eat. There's going to be agitation because the cortisol and the adrenaline cause our body to feel agitated, and hyperactivity. So we have to be aware of the fact that the emotion is still there, even though we're not registering it as a particular feeling. It's kind of like this blind spot in the middle of our eye. And the big thing, of course, for us right now is the separation from the people that we love and what we're attached to. It's a different world. So that blind spot kind of comes in, and now we see things on the outside. And one of the ways of looking at it is that we become blinded by these experiences of separation. Now we aren't able to actually name the cause. And now we start looking for other explanations of what it is that's actually causing the alarm. And we start blaming other people. We see this in some of the people that are doing, going out and saying, oh, so-and-so's this bad and so-and-so's bad and there's nothing wrong and this COVID-19, it's not really anything. Well, it's too scary to think that we have a virus in our midst that could do something to us. So we find somebody else to blame. Another way of thinking about this is that children are not alarmed because there are monsters under the bed. There are monsters under the bed because children are alarmed. And certainly, I'm sure you have all as parents had to deal with quite a lot of monsters lately under the bed. because the alarm goes up. And now that Monsieur Legault has made his proclamation, probably the monsters are going to reappear all over the place, under the bed, in the closet, up in the skylight, who knows where, because the alarm has gone up, and we as human beings have to find a reason for the alarm. And it just might be too scary for our children to say, I'm scared that we're going to get sick. uh, and again, we're in a huge dilemma here because we are all experiencing this kind of alarm. So when we become blind, now this becomes anxiety, because we're not actually talking about what truly is alarming us. We're not feeling the futility because we're numbed out. And now we move into something that causes us to be possibly overcautious, overconscientious, and overconcerned. Again, in this particular case, there's probably a good argument to be made for being very, very, very cautious, but some of us are being pushed into being overcautious. It's called skewed caution, and this is what can cause irrational obsessions and compulsive behaviors. So these behaviors, we try and I'll manage this alarm, but they don't actually manage it, because they stop the alarm for a little while and then it starts up again. So what happens is, when children can't talk about being scared, this alarm energy gets channeled into other behaviors. It gets channeled into kind of a generalized anxiety about being worried about everything. It can cause specific fears. Now they become really worried about every little creepy crawly that's in your house. They become scared of going out onto the lawn because maybe there's going to be snakes out there. They have some compulsions to do certain kinds of things. They have nightmares, restlessness, hyperactivity. And of course, they're going to then be doing things that will try and get this alarm to go down. So maybe if they were used to suck their thumb when they were little, maybe they're going to go back to thumb sucking, chewing, nail biting, eating. Some kinds of rhythmic activity, a lot of rocking and pacing and listening to music and swinging and worry beads, twirling their hair, rubbing their genitals. All of these are ways in which we're trying to calm that system down. Seeking comfort through contact with transitional objects, physical exertion, and of course, turning, if you're an adult and you can do that, turning to the other things that we can take in that can calm it down. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. What I'm going to be suggesting to you are ways in which you can take charge of these and help your child to actually use these in a way that will help them. So, what can we do to deal with alarm and anxiety? And this is going to be a big challenge in the next couple of weeks as our society ramps up, and especially as our schools and daycares open up. We're going to have to work very, very hard with our children to implement some of these things. We're going to have to work very hard with ourselves to implement some of these things. It's going to be hard work. We're going to be even more tired. But I think if we do some of these things, we can keep that alarm under control, and hopefully we can watch ourselves get through this so that we realize we have the strength to deal with scary kinds of things. So what I'm going to be looking at are accepting alarm and anxiety, providing a sense of rest and safety, provide outlets that help reduce the effects of alarm, use the power of play, and help tears to flow in the face of alarming futilities, and to cultivate courage. So accepting anxiety, right now, this is the world that we live in. We can't make it an alarming experience. What's going to be a challenge is some of your children are going to come up with things that you never thought. They're going to talk about weird things. They're going to talk about aliens coming. Don't worry about that. Understand that talking about aliens, talking about zombies are all a way of the brain trying to figure out what to do with this extreme alarm. We have to depersonalize it. It's okay. My brain, oh yeah, I have lots of nightmares too when I get alarmed. It's kind of scary right now. Absolutely, that's okay. Yeah, maybe there are going to be zombies coming. Just accept it, normalize it. It's part of what happens when the alarm goes up, and make room for it. Give space for it. Understand, know that it's going to happen. And don't battle the symptoms. Don't tell them that there's no such things as zombies, because that's what their brain has latched onto, right? So if they start doing a compulsive behavior or obsessing about something, just recognize that's a sign that the brain is overloaded with alarm. And don't try and stop the behavior. Just come alongside it Acknowledge, oh my goodness, you're getting worried. Whoa, it really feels scary right now. I'm here. I'm here. And just the words, I'm here, we're here, are is enough. And you notice I'm not saying calm down or it's going to be okay. When the behaviors are extreme, saying it's going to be okay might be a little bit overwhelming for a child, but letting a child know that you are there is really important. We need to provide comfort in this moment, not advice. One of my friends posted on Facebook her son's comments, and I know this woman, and she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. But I'm sure she was trying to comfort her children, and her son basically said, "Mom, all your motivational chatting is stressing me out." Just be there. Just be there. That's enough. That absolutely is enough. What we need to be doing is providing the sense of rest and safety, and hard to do when we ourselves do not feel safe. But we need to give this to our children. What do they need? They need to know that we will take care of them and get through this difficult time. They don't need more information, except information that will reassure, but relationships. Safety is about human attachment, and we can provide that. Put the emphasis on togetherness and relationship. Do more things together as a family right now if you can. If you lose it, if you haven't had a good time, if you need a break from your kids, whatever, be the one to restore the relationship. Go to your child again and say, all right, we just had a bad time right now. Let's start again. We're going to get through this. Assure them that the adults will continue to be there to care for them, and reassure them that we'll find a way through this, even if it's different from what we had in mind. We can figure it out as a family, as a school, as a society. Now, we need to make sure that they have a way for reducing. So get the fidget items out, squishy balls, whatever. Um, uh, Maybe provide some weighted items. In our schools, we have these little weighted frogs and whatever, but maybe just a heavy blanket. Sometimes that's what a child needs to basically bring that alarm system down. Maybe create a small calming area in your house. This is just a box that somebody cut up and used. Maybe you can just put a sheet over a table, someplace where a child can go to cut out some of the extra noise that is causing the alarm system to go up. Also, obviously, lots of outdoor play and exercise is huge, huge, huge. And this is why everyone is telling us go for walks and play, because these are things that can get that adrenaline and the cortisol out of our body as well. Obviously, grooving and jamming together, movement, dancing, playing together. Obviously, we're not going to let the children hold hands when they're at school, but a good dose of dancing and whatever when they come back into the school is going to be necessary to help them. And of course, encourage emotion-based play. Play is like a release valve. The emotions can move through. Don't be disturbed or upset if your children play at alarming things, play monsters, playing being the monsters, wanting lots of scary stories, because scary stories like sort of help us to live the alarm, but through somebody else, pretending to be scared. And when you go outside to play with your children, actually playing monsters with them, be the monster that maybe nearly catches them, and then be the person that saves them from the monster, is all very helpful to calibrate the alarm system. They are going to play disaster. They're going to play hospital. They're going to play being sick. They're going to play isolation. These are all ways in which they are going to be playing out what is happening in their life. Play is a place where they can process their internal world. So they're going to play separation as well, playing dead, playing the orphan. Interestingly enough, again, if you want to help them with their alarm, when you go outside after you've had your day of working, go outside and play hide and seek with them. Make sure you find them. Even playing tag, and I was watching a little video on how Denmark is welcoming the children back to school. They play shadow tag because it's important for children to feel that someone's going to catch them. And obviously, children are going to be interested in stories that are about loss or separation because, as my colleague Hannah Beach said, it is through play that children get to imagine how they will survive in the face of adversity. And of course, help the tears to flow. Talk about the emotion, reflect back the emotion. That was scary. You're not sure what's going to happen. Match it. Put a little bit of fear into your voice. That's scary. I know it's really scary. We're not going to make them any more scared than they are. They already are pretty scared. especially if we take the next step, which is then moving towards sadness. I know this is really scary. Put some sadness into your voice, and hopefully that will lead your child to cry. When they start crying, do not ask them why, because they're going to give you a reason. And if they've already given you a reason, well, I'm crying because I'm not going to, my brother is being, oh, I know, the macaroni isn't good. It's too much water in the macaroni. You didn't put enough cheese into the macaroni. Whatever they're crying about, don't worry, let them cry, because the crying isn't about the macaroni. The crying is about the alarm that needs to come out. Hold them in their tears. Don't reassure them. Don't talk about it. Don't try and fix this. As soon as they start to cry, our whole family should rejoice when our children are crying. We should all cry together. Have a good cry. Don't do too much talking, because we need to cry and grieve before we can come up the other side. With an older child and adults, we need to actually prime these tears. We need to be reading sad books, watching sad movies. I know sad books for me. I read the Chicken Soup for the Teacher's Soul, the Chicken Soup, these kinds of things. Watching sad movies, watching things on YouTube, listening to melancholy music. Darken the room so that you don't feel so vulnerable when you cry. Walk shoulder to shoulder so that nobody can see that the tears are coming down your face, but be shoulder to shoulder so that you're close. Put some sadness in your voice, normalize the sadness and the tears. And of course, we do need to cultivate courage. So we need to anticipation and apprehension. We're scared of going back to school, but we're looking forward to seeing our teachers. So we fan those desires. We're looking forward to seeing our friends. What do you want? Yes, it's scary, but you do want to see your friends. So put those two together, the alarm and the desire on the one hand, on the other hand, and then help the child mix those two desires. With younger children, their desire for seeing their friends is going to overwhelm them, and they're going to, oh, I can hardly get to school. But with your slightly older children, they're going to feel the alarm as well. And so we need to mix these two things together so that they can face and with courage go to do what they have to do. Those of you that are teachers, of course, you're doing the most wonderful things to help with this alarm as you're communicating with them. You're going to let them know that you and the other staff will be there when the school opens. You recognize that it's going to be a bit scary, but it's going to be okay. We're going to be there with you. If the children start to cry, you're going to welcome them. You're going to continue to reassure. You have to accept the limitations. This time of coming back is going to be a time for teaching. It's a time for figuring out how to make the new school work. And really, it is about presenting ourselves as being the answer. In French, we would say savoir être, be there. It is who we are, not necessarily everything that we do, although we can do some things that assure children that we will be there for them. Ultimately, we want to understand alarm and where the alarm is coming from. We want to stay in that caring alpha role as much as we can and give alarm lots of space. Help our children to find their sadness and their tear, and to use the power of play as much as we can. So there we are. I'm back, right?
Thank you, Eva. Sarah, do you have something to tell us?
I'd like to invite our participant to take their courage and ask questions if they have some. Also, it's one of our sacred teachings. So we have all those knowledge and values in our ways of doing things and our tradition. So I encourage you to focus on the courage, which is one of the values, and show courage to your teenager and to your children, so they can take example of you and they can admire you, and you can play a role of model and a leader for them. And one good way of doing this is going outside, take a walk, to lead them in a bush, in the territory. And we all know how we feel. I know how I feel when I go in the land. I feel safe, I feel secure, I feel relaxed, I feel like I'm in Indian time all the time. Like there's no rules, and I can calm myself down a bit and I can experience. So it's very, very important for the for the kids and students and children to experience as a way of learning for First Nation. So this weekend, something very nice happened. My teenager went outside, and they both were cutting woods, and they were so proud. And I didn't have to be there to reward them or giving them a prize. They were like proud of themselves for doing it, and my husband was proud of teaching it. So it was just amazing, and time fly by. The day was done, and they just accomplished something good, and they want to do it over and over again. So my my tips to you as an artist, as a mom, is keep playing with your children. Just have fun, be creative, and find your own ways. What's working for you? Uh, I've, I've been failing a lot of time trying stuff that the kid doesn't want to do, but one time it will work, and you will have like amazing time with them, and you will be able to see their talent and gifts, and push those gifts so they can really feel good. So it's just this is the way we used to do, and we still doing in some families and some culture. You will have, some of you probably more knowledge than I have. So go back to your roots, go back outside, go back to the nature and this connection. It's really a healing moment for all of us. Thank you.
We do have questions. Thank you, Sarah. You started to ease anxiety and alarm when the children come into class after this time away, that the biggest thing you can have is your smile in order for them to feel cared for. Always going to be able, if you are required to wear a mask other than just the tone of your voice, I'm sorry, the tone of your voice, and allowing them to understand that you're still there for them, but having a mask on may change how.
Change how
That's a
they.
good question.
That's a wonderful question. My goodness, again, there's so, well, the eyes, yes. Is that what you were showing, Sarah? Yes, the eyes. It will come through in the eyes. I mean, the good thing is that when the children come back, especially the young ones, but when children come back, they're going to be really, really eager to see you because you're such an important part of their life. And so, in the first week or so, it's going to be relatively easy to collect them, and again, they're going to have to get used to it being with the eyes, but the eyes are very potent and powerful. Of course, normally we're also used to touching children, and so that's going to be really hard because you're not going to be able to do that in the way that you would like to. And so it's going to be important that we speak slowly. I think it's going to be important that we just also hopefully you will have time to go in and prepare your classroom. I'm sure you're going to have time for preparing it. Think about ways in which it's going to be easy for children to be able to do the right thing. Again, maybe we're going to need to use lots of masking tape. These are all the things that we're going to have to play about. But children will see in your eyes, and it's going to be hard for you because you also are, the mask is going to be irritating and so on. So you're going to have to work harder at getting that smile into your eyes. You might need to practice it a little bit before you get back, but your children, and some of it also is just our body, like trying, it's going to be a challenge, but I mean, the kids are so thrilled about seeing you again that will carry a long way.
And also, Eva, by creating like a really safe environment, you can also put some music, have some oil, essential oil, that smells good, like sapinage or something like that, like it feels good, it feels safe to be there, it's a sign that you are taking care of them. So that can be
reassuring, yes, absolutely, yeah.
Next one, for the parents who choose not to send their kids back to school, how can they explain and reassure their children that everything will be okay eventually?
Well, I mean, that is our big challenge as the adults, because of course we're not sure. But we know, I mean, the good thing is that there are some countries where they are, like Denmark is trying it out already. And so, we partly can say to our children that, our family is not ready right now, but the summertime is going to come and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to see what the best thing is about going back to school. um, it's really, and again, this goes back to the presentation that I made, the second presentation that I did about the alpha role, is sometimes as the alpha we have to act a little more sure than we actually are, because our children are looking to us, and it's tough because it's unknown territory for all of us. But the biggest thing that children are afraid of is that we will give up on them. So if their anxiety gets high and we get frustrated because they're worried about this and worried about that, and they're asking a million questions, and we get irritated because they've asked the same question 150 times. And by the way, I am not a patient person, so I totally understand if you're impatient with your child. Trust me. I've made every mistake in the book. What's always important is after we've made a mistake is we go to the child and say, let's try again. Because that's the biggest thing children want to know is, are you going to give up on me? Am I going to be too much for you? And I don't have any difficulty, and again, luckily we have our phones and we can walk our phones outside. You might want to call one of your friends and, I've had it with my kids, I can't stand them anymore. No problem. Go do it outside, go do it in your car, go do it somewhere where you can vent about how you've had it with your kids. But come back and just say to them, I'm here for you. We're here for you. We're not giving up on you. That's what's the biggest alarm for our children, is their fear that we won't be able to handle them. And if they feel that, we're there for them, they can feel more reassured.
So we do have next question, Eva. My question is about sickness. If we have older staff to be returning to school, this is a very worrisome concern. They may also be returning home to an older spouse.
The thing is that I can't really answer what every community's, every school board decision is going to be around the health concerns of their staff. I think this needs to be done community by community. And yes, of course, there are real concerns about bringing the virus in, but I guess we're going to have to take similar measures as to what was taken by our frontline workers who went into the health system. We are going to have to take extra steps to be careful not to bring it into our homes. But yes, of course, that adds a whole nother layer of worry and work and stress to us. And of course, that's why we also need to understand that in this next little while, our job as teachers is going to change dramatically. We are not going to be teaching the content that we wanted to teach. What we are going to be doing is figuring out how we can make this work. And so I think we need to, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, and there's still a lot of unknowns as to how it will all play out.
Thank you, Eva. Next question. Could a morning daily grounding activity when students arrive help to ease or calm some anxiety?
Absolutely. And I think each of you is going to be different in terms of what you're comfortable with and what you can do. Some of you might be very knowledgeable about breathing and maybe um, what do they call this, mindfulness exercises or whatever. So some of you might be very, very good at that. Some of you, but what's really important is a routine. So from every day, if you can, and again, I don't know how your schools are going to work, but every day do things in the similar way. Slow your morning down. There's no way that you're going to be able to do all of the activities that you had done in a regular day. I don't even know if they're going to be having the specialists. I mean, I don't know what the daily routine is going to be, but very, very important every time you see your children. And to have a little routine. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and that we take our time. As Valerie said, even just putting on some quiet music will help all of our systems to calm down, a little bit of breathing. The thing we need to be very careful about with any of our activities is that we lead those activities, that we be the ones that are in charge of them. And then we also notice, because some children can, they get uncomfortable as well. So yes, I think routine, predictability are going to be very, very important at this time.
We do have a comment. First Nation communities may not all follow what the province dictates about education. Therefore, many communities may not be going back until September.
Okay, so you guys, if that's the case, then you have a chance to figure out or to watch all the mistakes that everyone in the province will have made. And and that's, I mean, again, I believe that this is what Premier Legault actually possibly had in mind, is that we need to figure out how to do it. Not all the kids will be there, and so we will learn from the province here. We will learn from, I don't know if there are other provinces that are going back. We'll learn from Denmark, we'll learn from other communities, figuring out how we can do it. And I was quite surprised when there's a little YouTube video. I don't know where to find it because it came through on one of my Facebook pages, but I'm sure if you type in Denmark school, going back, COVID-19, you'll see it. The children were quite excited to be back. The teachers were quite excited to be back. Like, there was a good atmosphere and they were doing the best they could. And so, maybe we can make this work better than we think, but it is going to be hard work. And the most important thing, again, is for us not to be afraid of alarm and anxiety. It is what's going to happen. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's all these interviews now about mental health, but actually the reality is it's the most, if people are saying, yes, I'm anxious and I'm scared, that's not a mental health problem. That's reality. There's nothing, if you aren't scared, I'm much more worried about you if you're not scared, right? If you're feeling numb. So we don't always understand emotional well-being. Feeling our emotions is very important for us. It's exhausting, but it's important because that's what keeps us safe.
And also, if school don't open, this is a good time for you to plan how you will welcome your students for the next year, And I'm working with two community, French one, but we're talking about having like a few the first weeks to be just for play, get time to connect together. And so it can be really interesting if it doesn't start, but thinking on how we can reconnect with our children, because you will be separated for a long time. So, but how we can reconnect, and then how can we make this new year a great year, and even if we're stressed, to teach them, as we saw, like it won't happen. So this is kind of a cycle that we did. We talked about play, and then we went to adaptation. We did frustration, anxiety, and it all comes back to play. So if we see it that way, and if you don't start, you do have a chance to rethink on how you can welcome your people. So if there's any question, we still have few minutes, or comments, please. This is our last webinar. As Sarah said, courage, ask your question.
Oh, well, thank you very much to the people that asked their questions. They were very helpful. Yeah, for sure. No. Well, I wish you all the best. I know that we have a large journey ahead of us as adults, as educators. Our children are counting on us, but we also have had a chance to slow things down a little bit, to rethink what are maybe important things in our lives and for our children. And I'm hoping that we can grow from this experience as a community and as a society as well. So I wish you strength and courage and lots of support with the people that are around you.